Sam Jenks, and welcome to another episode of The Way We Source, a podcast hosted by Kodiak Hub, where we share our talks with procurement practitioners, leaders, experts, consultants, content gurus, and people that we find downright inspiring, diving into the role that sourcing and procurement plays in the way that we live. If you like today's episode, as always, make sure to rate the program and give us a follow. Today's guest is the undisputed king of Procurement Interims, a seasoned transformation specialist. He's been dropping into complex projects for nearly 20 years and consistently delivering results. Whether he's mentoring new interims, leading strategic procurement projects, or connecting top talent through his network, today's guest brings a rare mix of authority, deep expertise, and also a get-it-done energy to every engagement. We're pleased to have him and welcoming on the show, Mr. Richard Struthers. Richard, welcome to today's episode.
Oh, thank you for having me, and thank you for the great intro as well. Love that.
We like to be able to welcome our guests with the warmth that they deserve. I'd love to start with a question that we ask a lot of our guests as well. What exactly does this crazy world of procurement and sourcing mean to you?
Oh, that's a great question. Do you know what I mean? I think in the 20 years I've worked in consulting and procurement, it's given me a huge amount of variety and the opportunity to work on some really cool, interesting projects and really add value to organisations as well. And you can walk away and go, wow, I helped with that, I delivered that, and you can leave behind something of meaningful value. But also you got a few like anecdotes and things that you can talk about, stuff that you've delivered. I can walk down the high streets. A few years ago, I could walk down the high street and see some of the projects that I've done that I've been really proud of. So that's what's crazy and awesome about our careers.
Isn't that nice, right? And I think that's a lot of the inspiration behind the reasons why we had started the podcast in the first place. Procurement and sourcing, supply chain, these are the pillar functions of an organization to be able to deliver real value, not only to their end customer, but to society at large, right? Something that you hit on there that I think is really interesting is both the very tangible aspects of the role, right? Being able to see the value you deliver, but also the variety of the role. Do you mind providing like examples of what you mean by the variety of the role?
Yeah, I'll give you one. I'll give you a couple of examples. So really early on in my career, I was working a consultancy, and we were working for a global drinks brand. And my job was to work on the supply chain to bring in the point of sale material into Europe, place the orders and track them through, and manage the team that did that. And it was brilliant. You go to some of the parties in London, and you'd see the stuff that you brought in, and you go, wow, people are actually wearing the stuff that we bought. They don't know how much hard work that went into that in terms of the supply chain. So that's kind of on one aspect. And then later on in my career, I had the opportunity to work on a COVID program. So as an interim, and many of us talk about it as being like the world's biggest startup. And I was working on professional services and contingent labour to secure the resources that were the consultancy and contingent labour resources that were needed to help deliver that big program. So yeah, very different projects and very different needs for society, but hugely valuable and interesting.
If you were going to say to somebody that maybe is looking to start their career in procurement or looking at a path that could be procurement and sourcing, what would be a tip that you would give somebody that's just starting out in their career or interested in the space?
Yeah, I would say give it a go. I moved from a supply chain role into a procurement role. It was an internal move, and I look back on it now. I don't think I've ever looked back since I've done it. So I'd certainly give it a go. Maybe go and talk to some people who do the role and ask them about what's really interesting in that. I'll tell you where procurement came from for me. I was 15 or 16. It was my work experience at school. And my dad worked for a record company who did all of the distribution in the UK, and they started doing DVDs and games and stuff. And I went, there was a man there who bought the singles for release. So he would launch acts into the UK. And I thought that was the coolest job in the world, to work with the record companies and music. And that was where my inspiration came from. I went to him and I said, how do you get into that? How do I get a job? What can I do? And they actually were really good to me. They gave me temporary work whilst I went through university, and they took me on for a couple of years after university. And I worked in supply chain with them. But it was, whilst I was on a work experience, I went to talk to someone who inspired me to go into, supply chain. But it was because I was in the music industry at the time.
Yeah. And again, I think that talks again back to the variety, but also the aspect of being able to see the tangibles of what the procurement function can be able to provide, right? Which is inspiring for sure. For those that don't know what you guys are doing at Rosemay Procurement, do you mind just catching up our listeners on your services that you're providing and what it is that also, your customers, businesses that work with you gain from your services?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Rosemay Procurement was initially it was a vehicle for me to go contracting. So, as an independent contractor. So, and I was lucky enough to work for a big global procurement consultancy and subcontract through them, and I worked on some really awesome projects through them. And then on the back of working on the COVID program and a previous client, and also with the consultancy, there started to be demand for us to support them through referring interims through my network. So I started doing that as a bit of a side hustle. So to grow my business out and provide support, and that's really that's turned into my full-time job. So we've got a variety of customers where I refer people in from my network, but we want to attract other awesome talent as well who are referred into via people that we know, and we put them on projects. We've got people working projects in utilities, public sector, through procurement consultancies, and we've got one person who's working on one of the biggest infrastructures projects in the UK. We've got people who are working doing IT procurement type projects and stuff. So there's a whole variety there. And we also provide some mentoring to interims who want to come into our industry to perform, to do great work as interims. And that, I find, can be quite a big step for people because of the uncertainty that's involved in it. So you're going from a nice permanent job, you've got consistent income every month, and then you're jumping into a world of uncertainty where you are chasing contracts. So and how do you go about setting yourself up? How do you set your CV up? How do you network? So we help people with that as well.
Very exciting. I'm curious, because I'm somebody who myself has been in a business for nearly 9 years now. I was the third hire at this company. I've been around, from the start. So I think I seek stability like many people do, right? What do you think that it is that attracts you, but also those in your network to the interim role? What makes it so, fantastic to be able to take on as a new challenge comparative to sitting in a role as a practitioner, in a more traditional context?
So I think it sits in two things. So I've got some really great friends who work in permanent roles and have been with their organisations a long time, and they love it because they're invested in that business and they want to grow, and they're really passionate about what they do. And all for them, I think it's brilliant what they do. With interims, in my experience, it's about variety. So I was always interested in wanting to work with different brands and wanting to work with different companies and have the flexibility to move around depending on what's available. And I like networking as well. So I think you can get that working for a big procurement consultancy. Of course you can. Right. But there is a bit about almost having a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit. You've got that little bit of risk sitting in the back of your head about, where's my next project? Where's my next project going to come from? And that motivates you to network, motivates you to talk to recruitment agencies, motivates you to talk to people like me, motivates you to talk to different companies so that you can go out and find your next project. And I think so maybe if you've got a bit of entrepreneurial flair, you like a bit of variety, you like to carry some of that risk, that's really important. The other part is also there a lot of interims like the flexibility of you can work when you want. If you want to take 2 or 3 months off, you can, providing you've built your buffer. So I know some people who only work 6 months in a year, or some people who work part time. So variety, flexibility, bit of entrepreneurship and risk, I think.
You make it sound very attractive, I have to say, right? What do you think that it teaches you being in an interim role rather than, being settled in one business, that choice to be a contractor? Is there any big learnings you think you can extract from those experiences?
Do you know what? I was thinking about this the other day. I actually think becoming an interim made me a more rounded procurement professional.
Let's dig into that.
Yeah. So when and I love my consulting role. I really did. I worked mainly in FMCG, and when I left, I went into retail, and I went to learn about how that retailer worked, how they viewed procurement, how they worked with suppliers, their views on risk and cost. I then went into utilities to do a completely different set of categories and learn about regulated procurements and how to run those processes. So I think it was getting exposure to how different people do it, and by being independent and on your own, you immerse yourself within that organisation on that project, and you learn about their governance, their tools, their processes, what isn't there, and you can bring with you what you learned from the last contract, and they see that as hugely valuable, because they want to learn from the other companies. So I think there's good practices that I brought with me, and then there's some things that I probably wouldn't do, but that's part of the journey that I've been on, for sure.
What do you think are some of the primary challenges that you meet as an interim, right? You're coming into a business typically to solve a problem, in many instances, right? What are the challenges that the top challenges you or those in your network that you're helping to place meet? And also then how do those individuals and or yourself, when you've been in the role, typically overcome those challenges as well? What are kind of your hit list of the things that you want to do to get past challenges?
So I think there's 3 in my head. The first is you land. Who is it that I need to go and talk to? Where are we now? So setting that baseline of what is it that I need to get done? Who do I need to go and speak to? When does it need to be done by? Mm-hmm. That's the first one. Is the second one is like, how are you doing the procurement today? So what are your tools? What are your processes? What systems do you use? What's the governance?
Right.
What's your approach to project management and risk? So how's that doing it today? And then as an interim, in the background of your head, you've got how you do it. So this is how I run a project. This is my experience of buying maybe fleet in X company, or this is how I bought FM, etc. And you've got all of that knowledge and all of that templates, but how you did it before might not be right for the new client, but they want your knowledge and expertise. So it's not a cookie cutter approach. It's how do I adapt what I've already got that fits the needs of that organization. So I see that as the next challenge is, baseline, how does it work? And then how do I adapt all of my experience and knowledge that adds value to the client?
Yeah, and I think that you make a good point here, right? That you can use the exposure that you've had in multiple roles to be able to typically then come in with a new perspective, but it needs to still be fit for purpose. The one thing that you talked about there, though, is related back to an interim comes in typically again to solve a challenge. What is the brief or the challenge that you're typically pulled towards, right? Like, do you see recurring themes of why you're brought in or why those in your network are brought in to a business as an interim?
Yeah, and it's generally, in my experience, it's a resource gap. So it's normally where our clients have got a really great team in place already, but the volume of works is huge, or there's a really big project that they need to do that they need to get done. So that's really where they're bringing in an interim. They want them to manage that dedicated project to get that done, get that delivered for them with little supervision. So they're expecting someone to have a more rounded experience. They don't necessarily need to be supervised as much. They need to be confident that they're good project managers, that they're going to work well with stakeholders. They're going to bring in knowledge and expertise, particularly in a regulated environment. And they need to be able to be confident that they're going to get the job done. And that's really what you need. You know, somebody's got that set of skills that they can be confident that they're going to hit their milestones, and it's, you know, the contract's going to get signed off or the strategy is going to get approved. I think that's the biggest challenge.
And playing devil's advocate a bit here, right? Which I hate. I don't know why I even said it. I hate when people say playing devil's advocate. It means that you just have a differing opinion. But so the differing opinion here, right? Why would I not just bring in a consultant? Why would I bring in an interim instead of you know, just a management consultant to be able to fill that gap?
I think you can, and I think I think you can. And why wouldn't you? You know, and why wouldn't you? And I think there's we work with a lot of management consultants, and I've worked with them in the past. They're brilliant. Why wouldn't you? And you know, you've got the brand, they've got the ready-made toolkits, they've got everything you possibly need. I think it comes down to budget at the end of the day, and that's the challenge. So I think you can buy an independent contractor to go and do that work and get the job done. They will be significantly less than a management consultancy, but what you get with a management consultancy is the brand, the depth of their expertise, you know, all of their knowledge sharing and analytics and tools, and you can reach into that organisation and they can deploy extra resource. That's the benefit. If you buy an interim, you've just got that person in the main.
Do you see that, like, you know, the knowledge of that an interim is in for a contracted period of time, and obviously a contract can always be extended, but you know, the expectation is that it's time bound in that case. Do you see that business leaders or procurement leaders that, you know, you or others in your network are brought into projects on, that there is, for example, a clear understanding of kind of here's the start and here is the end, right? Like there is this something that needs to be delivered, or, you know, is it more of a brief focus? And also, where do you see that those businesses succeed, or maybe also pitfalls of bringing in an interim? Like, what does good application of an interim versus bad application of an interim look like, right?
So I think, in my experience, the organisations who really get it right is that they're crystal clear about what they want that interim to do. Yeah. So what the scope is, what projects they want them to work on, how long they need them for, and how they're going to engage them and how they're going to support them to be successful. The organisations who do that really do get it right, and they're also looking for the qualities and who's going to fit well in that organisation based on their experiences. So if you can do that, you're going to do great. I think the challenge is probably the unknowns that sits in your risk profile. So it could be market influences that could derail a project. It could be internal stakeholder challenges or governance approvals. It could be budgets that could influence it. So that may well shorten your engagement with the interim, or it could extend it. because you need more
Right.
time in order to deliver that project. So it can really vary. I think it's we always advocate regular check-ins with your interim to do to check how well that project's doing.
Mm.
What the organisation needs to do. I think if you leave an interim to run it, you still need to do your checks and balances, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that it's like you said, it's obvious, right? Like there is a job to be done. To not have good brief as to what that job is to be done, and then intervals of check-in on progress is you're not setting yourself up for kind of a smart outcome, right? Kind of this measurable and achievable elements of that smart goals. Curious, like you have SIPS as one of the items that's headlined on your profile. Obviously, many in the UK know about SIPS, but some of our listeners maybe don't and know about the importance for you. I mean, what is the importance of SIPS for purchasing professionals in the UK? Because I know that you're an advocate.
Yeah, I think it is it's our governing body our professional body in the UK, and they've got other branches around the world as well.
And sorry, Richard, SIPS, for those of the listeners that don't know, what does it stand for?
Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply. So
awesome. Thanks.
I'm an advocate of SIPS for two reasons. So if you're new to the profession, they've got an examination route that you can go down, and I think it gives you the support and the frameworks, particularly if you're not working in a consultancy. It gives you the support and the frameworks and the learning to support you in your role. So if you go down the exam route, I think it's a brilliant way, particularly for early career procurement people. I didn't do that. I went down the management entry route. I was really fortunate, to have started in the procurement consultancy. I got to work on a few different clients, and they had a lot of procurement training to support me. As I gained more experience, I went down the management entry route, and actually that was really hard work. And to prepare for that, there's different steps that you need to go through, and they measure you against what's called a professional standard. So there's lots of criteria that you get benchmarked against through a questionnaire, and you need to provide references, and you need to have a formal interview against that. And the reason I did that was I wanted to benchmark myself against the standard, so that I knew all of the work and all of the experiences that I gained met a professional standard. So that's why I did it. And I think, and it gave me, I actually found I became a more confident procurement professional because I've got that, I've met that standard.
Yeah. Now, you, of course, were able to benchmark yourself, able to gain the certification and live up to a particular standard, which I think is very important. On a more tactical and operational level, was there any areas of you as a procurement professional that you think you got strengthened within your actual hands-on abilities? And if so, which were they that you were able to strengthen?
I think so. As an interim who goes and delivers projects myself, I sit very well on the sourcing side and then developing the upfront part. So if we need to go and deliver a project, but we don't know how we're going to do it, then I sit very well in the development of the procurement strategy that sits within a particular category in terms of our approach. So that tends to be on large programs and large projects. And I've got the tools and the frameworks that I use and the skills to do that. And then that gives people the confidence that they've got something that they could go and run that tender process with, or whether they want to do that with me or someone else. So I sort of tended to find through my procurement career the areas that I enjoy the most and the areas that I'm good at. So that's kind of where I sit, really.
Yeah. Understood. And is there anything that you have SIPS to thank for those particular, nuggets of experience and frameworks?
Yeah, I think so. It's nice to know the some of the theoretical tools which we and I think SIPS is a good knowledge base that I can go into. It's also enabled me to expand and network with some other people who've got
Yeah.
who are members of SIPS. So I've got people that I go and talk to, as well as people who are not who don't have their SIPS but who are as equally as brilliant. They've just either not had the opportunity or not chosen to go down that route. But I've got people I can talk to there as well.
Great. Now, you've been in the profession for quite some time, almost 20 years, right? Or over 20 years at this point. I mean, how have you seen this profession of procurement evolve in the last 20 years? What are some of the big things that you would say from a bird's eye view?
I think it sits in a few areas for me. So the first is the advent of technology, very much so. When I look back, we were running tenders on email. We were even still getting people to post us their responses, their tender responses when I first started out. And actually the use of e-procurement tools has sort of given us more robustness and control, and in terms of how we track, and and the same with the spend analytics modules. We didn't have those. We were still doing that on spreadsheets when I first started out, and that's having that dashboard of analysis has been a really great addition to the profession. So I think that's been really good. I think we've become a lot more strategic, I think, in terms of our how we go about approaching procurements and how we go about looking at the market. I definitely think the benefits of that I've seen since I've gone into the public sector and working in utilities myself is this advent of fairness in the supply chain. So it's less about just going out and getting the best price. It's about being fair to the whole market in order to enable them to bid. And it's been brilliant with the new Procurement Act coming through in terms of giving fair opportunities to small businesses as well, to support them to come into the market. So, and there's been a lot more information since I first started about ethical supply chains and auditing and those sorts of things. So it's brilliant seeing that evolution in terms of us being more of a strategic partner to the business, and they're the best projects. Strategic partnerships as an enabler to the business to access the supply chain and get the support that they need. Whereas when I really first started out, it was about how do we reduce cost, and that was the primary driver of what we did. But actually, I've enjoyed seeing the change over my career. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's fantastic to be able to see. Is there any pockets of procurement that you think are really going to be augmented the most by technology in these coming years?
I definitely think so. When more recently, I was sort of involved in a lot of the purchase to pay checking, and the reconciliation and with suppliers, and we were still, even till quite recently in the last few years, we were still doing that. So I think the augmentation and making that more automated, and maybe other businesses that I haven't worked with are a lot more mature than we were when we were doing it, but certainly more of that, yes please, would be good, to reduce that, reduce the need of people having to do those tasks, and we can free those people up to have more interesting, rewarding careers to work on, strategic initiatives and develop themselves in procurement without having to do that. I think that would be really good. And there's certainly elements within sourcing and contract management processes that I think there'll be benefits with augmenting those, I think, as well.
Is there one that you experience on projects that companies still have as kind of a white space related to like sourcing and contract management?
So I've got, thanks for that. So I've got some thoughts on this, on some of the technologies that I've used recently myself where we worked with clients. Is there's a huge benefit to the sourcing technology that comes in, which about having robust process in place. I think some of the challenges in terms of areas that could help and be improved is is improving the user experience of using those tools and technologies to actually help with the people doing procurement. And I think there's a risk of it being tech driven rather than user driven. So the tech driven is, right, here are all of the fields that you need to fill in, get all of that data in. It actually becomes almost like a data entry task for the category managers and the sourcing managers who have to do that work, and it's important to do it, but actually it can be quite hard to use, and I think there's some opportunity to be more of an enabler to those people rather than having to put information into the system. So the more tech evolves to help with that, then they can have much more rewarding and enriching careers. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the user centricity is super important. I mean, there's this concept as well of kind of, hyper functionality, and we're experiencing it, right? I pick up my phone and, ChatGPT is one of the strongest tools that I have. So I think AI is also going to continue to augment and make use of this, both structured and unstructured data, in really interesting ways. I mean, we know that we're doing it in certain ways in our platform. And I think that many others are continuing on that trend, as well, especially related back to sourcing, where there's a ton of structured and unstructured data to be able to capture. So I think it's an interesting time for sure for tech, but user first, right? That user interface, that user experience, that has to be in focus, regardless of how fancy the technology is. So I hear you on that. Now, you've seen all sides of the coin here, right? You're now a supplier of services, once a practitioner, full time. I mean, how do you believe that procurement can improve supplier relationships? What are you experiencing now as a supplier yourselves? Do you have any kind of concrete examples of that?
Do you know what? I think I've really enjoyed the change to being a supplier. It's anxiety inducing, that's for sure, the change, but I think that's all part of it. I think what I'm seeing is I'm really understanding from a supplier point of view is the importance of long-term partnerships with customers and what that means to a supplier. So that enables a supplier to plan. And that's not just in terms of planning their resources. It means they can plan their cash flow. It can plan other things that they can do for you to support you. So I think that's, now I'm sitting on that side of the fence. I probably have more empathy towards that than I did from a procurement point, working as a practitioner.
Do you think that procurement sometimes is playing their cards a bit too close to their chest to quote unquote get the best deal or make the most savings, right? And in other senses, then they hurt their opportunity to be that customer of choice and really drive forward, the more strategic relationship with partners?
I do, yeah. And I was one of those people, we were incentivized to go out and get the best deal, but when you think about and there's models out there where suppliers are working with lots of different customers, and some treat them better than others, or some are more profitable than others, some have better payment terms than others, where it's that trade-off of where are they going to put their time, which ones are giving them, where do they feel that they're a strategic partner of their business. Now there are suppliers, and I recognise this when I was working as a procurement practitioner myself, I recognise that they see themselves as an extension of your business, and they're proud to work with you, and they're the people that who want to, you want to keep, and how do you keep them incentivised, and how do you keep them engaged, and how do you keep them in business? And I think certainly for smaller companies, startups and small businesses who want to engage with you, is actually how do you support them? What's the best way to enable them to be competitive? Because they've got ideas and innovations and ways of working that could really help you, but it's just enabling them to unlock that for you. So it's an interesting experience there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that you hit on something that's so important here, right? Is like this element of pride, right? And you wouldn't be going out to market if you had what the market has in the first place, right? You need those suppliers. They're an extension of your business for a reason, right? You require the good or service that they provide. But I hear what you're saying, right? To be able to enable those vendors to be able to be that customer of choice, some of the things that you can be able to do, you mentioned, right? A few, right? Like advantageous payment terms, not beating people down on contracts, making sure that you don't feel like you're getting swatted away as a gnat, but instead, treated as a partner in that perspective. And that can't be the case in all supplier relationships, but it gives some concrete examples, I think, of kind of, where procurement can be able to take inspiration from somebody like yourself, right? That's been on both sides of the coin and kind of knows from both positions as well, for sure. So I would love to kind of start rounding out, but I'm curious, as an interim, there's this interesting dichotomy, right? Of like coming into a business with a brief short term, but you've also been in positions as a leader in an interim, right? And I'm curious, how do you come into a business and be a good interim leader? What are the most important things that you need to be able to do beyond some of the things that you've already shared, to be a solid interim practitioner?
So I think there's a few things for me in there. One is really to work with the sense of urgency. You're there for a certain period of time. Clients want you there to get things done and done quickly. That's the first, is creating that sense of urgency, creating that structure and confidence in your ability to deliver. I think then the next part is how you communicate and show empathy. So these and I've worked in a couple of in-house permanent roles myself. The teams that are on the ground do really hard jobs. So the in-house procurement people they've got a lot of pressure on their shoulders. They do a lot more than just procurement. They're stressed out. So how do you take that pressure off them and give them support in the work that you do and show empathy for the challenges that they're facing on a daily basis, because they're in it, they own it. So I think that's really important, the empathy side and how you communicate and work with the stakeholders and show an understanding of their needs. The other one is, so therefore you're a role model of a rounded procurement professional in that when you're entering into that business. The great interims are the ones who provide mentoring into some of those teams. So if you're showing yourself as a role model, they will naturally come to you and say, "Oh, can you tell me about your career? What do you think about this?" And actually offering it up and providing that advice and support is massively valuable to clients. And I think it's really important. So if you're there just to do a job, that's great. If that's what the client needs, but gold standard is really that broadening out and supporting the team and showing empathy for the challenges that they have on a daily basis.
Right, because you're going to move on from that brief and that role, but those other practitioners will be there. So yeah, the ultimate goal is to be able to leave the business in a better state than when you came, right? And that means also the people. Absolutely. Yeah. Richard, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. We could chat all day, I'm sure. Before I let you go, I'd love to do a quick fire with you. We ask questions to our guests, things that are completely irrelated to Rosemay Procurement and Richard Struthers, the procurement professional, but instead the person. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
One word or one sentence answers. Ready to go?
Go for it.
All expenses paid trip. You're heading on vacation tomorrow. You can go by yourself, bring friends or family along with you. Where are you heading?
Oh, New Zealand.
Very nice.
Yeah. 100%. Can't wait. Yeah.
A particular reason why New Zealand? Is there one thing that's drawing you there in particular?
Oh, we're the ultimate nerds in our house. So we've watched The Hobbit, we've watched Lord of the Rings, we've seen it all on the telly. I know they've got a good craft beer scene there, friends told me. So yeah, to go and see that beautiful country as well, and then go to places like Hobbiton and things like that to see the stuff that we've seen on the film sets. That's the dream. The whole family want to go. So yeah, can't wait.
Very nice. Now, it might be something sci-fi in that perspective, but I was going to ask, a book or a podcast, something that you're listening to or is on your bedside table, whether it's professional or personal.
So I've just finished two over the last couple of weeks. So I've just finished the second Hunger Games book. So I finished the prequel, and then I'm working my way through the series. So we've got me and my children sort of got a bit of a book club going
Nice.
as we pass the books, which we love. We love the movies, and we're reading the books now. The other one was a professional book, which was Atomic Habits. So and that's fantastic about creating little habits every day that can build into big things. So I finished that quite recently, and I found that hugely valuable.
Very nice. Last one. In Swedish, we have a saying, paradrätt. It means the kind of the dish that you would make a guest that you know would be able to impress. It's your best, right? It's the thing that you would be your go-to if you're having dinner guests. I'm coming over to dinner to share a meal. What's your paradrätt that you're making, Richard?
Oh, do you know what? I love doing a roast dinner. That's probably my... that's probably the one that I'm most comfortable cooking, to be honest. Nice lamb roast dinner, with all the trimmings and that sort of thing. Get a bottle of wine, a few craft beers, that sort of thing. Yeah,
sounds lovely. Yorkshire is on the menu as well.
Oh yeah, Yorkshire pudding. Oh yeah. It doesn't. That's it. Goes with every type of roast dinner, right? I think there might be a few people who disagree with me, but we put them with everything. Yeah.
Well, I would love to be able to share a meal with you. It was great to be able to share this episode with you. If the people out there want to be able to know what you're doing, get in touch. What's the best way to be able to do so and be a part of your network?
Connect with me on LinkedIn. Say hello. If you follow me on LinkedIn, we run 2 events a year with some friends, and that's called Procurement. And that's a charity event where we raise money for cancer research and Samaritans, and that's an awesome networking event. We had 100 people come to the last one and raise lots of money, and that's and we love bringing communities together. So we've got some great friends that we do that with too. So yeah, contact
procurement for a bigger cause, and again, that's what it's all about. It sounds like an awesome one. Procure Rosemate Procurement. Richard Struthers, thank you so much for being a part of today's episode. It was great having you.
Thank you for having me. Really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.